in the Smith Center in 2018. So you get them at home, and I think that's a really important stretch for Carolina. When you come back from Virginia, is you get Virginia Tech and Louisville at home, you go to Boston College, and you get Florida State at home. Those are 4 really big games to close the month out. You want to go ideally 3-1, hopefully maybe 4-0, because you have the Noles at home, because the end of, or the month of March isn't easy. But I think that's, when you look at Carolina and you look at the schedule, I think even though it's a 20-game sprint, as you want to call it, I think you look at it in segments, as you got to 5 4-game segments. How can you do in those 4-game segments?
Yeah, I mean, you look at that stretch, and I mean, I think that's a little bit more difficult of a stretch, but a similar stretch to that one that we talked about at the end of January with Wake Forest, State, Pittsburgh, and Notre Dame. Very similar setup, 2 home games, a road game, and then back at home.
Yeah.
I think Virginia Tech is definitely winnable, but like you said, Mike Young is a really good head coach. That's not going to be as easy of a game as a lot of people expect. Louisville's banged up. You told me that today. We were discussing that for a little while, so there's a lot of things that they're going to have to work through as well this season outside of just COVID-19. Boston College, again, you feel like that's a team that you should be able to beat. Still, not quite on the same talent level as you. They're going to be in the bottom tier of the ACC. I look at that game against Florida State. I feel like that's going to determine a lot. That could be a big player in the ACC race. So Carolina's got to come ready for that game. I like the fact that they're playing Boston College before that game, sort of allows them to get into a rhythm. But yeah, that game's going to be huge before you head into the month of March with 2 games that I think are going to be extremely tough ones.
I think you know about it. That Florida State game's the second time you play them. Roy Williams is usually tough to beat twice in a regular season. You get that game at home. So if it has the implications that you're talking about, which could be ACC regular season on the line at that point, or controlling the rest of the regular season, you like the fact that it's in your building, and it's really hard to beat Roy Williams twice in a regular season. As you mentioned, you finish up the month of March. Only 2 games, but they're not very easy. You got to go to the Carrier Dome and play Syracuse. As Syracuse and their team, Carolina, plays twice this year. It's a revamped venue. They've completely taken the dome out of the Carrier Dome, and they've added air conditioning, and so it's going to be a little different feeling when you go there, but you're still playing in a football stadium. You still got to deal with all the background and the dropbacks of the plane in there. And
plus, it's them in March.
Yeah,
and
that's always usually
that's when they play good.
You always have the thing that, Tom Izzo owns March, Roy Williams owns March. Jim Boeheim, even though Syracuse hasn't been really great the last couple of years, they've been really good in March, and that's why they've bullcrapped their way into the NCAA tournament, and they've made runs in March Madness.
That's right.
So you got to go there. And then you finish up the season at home with Duke, as you do every other year, because that's who you finish up the season with. But, I mean, you're looking at that Final 3 stretch with Florida State, at Syracuse, and Duke. And they're all going to be, you're hoping, really important games. You really hope you're playing meaningful basketball at this point, unlike last year where you were trying to string together wins just to make yourself feel good about yourselves. Hopefully we're in a different situation where Carolina's playing for seeding at that point. Where are they going to be seeded when they have to go to the ACC tournament? What's their NCAA tournament seeding look like at that point? So, as I mentioned when we started the schedule breakdown, it's a manageable schedule, but it's not easy. And Carolina's young guys are going to have to grow up very quick because this conference is not going to feel bad for you if you have another bad season.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing here is that you're going to be playing a lot of your true freshmen that you brought in this year in significant roles early on in their careers, and they've got to be able to adjust pretty quickly. That's on the coaching staff to have them ready, but at the same time, this coaching staff hasn't been able to have them on the court as often as they probably would have liked with everything that's been going on with COVID-19. So, I mean, it's another one of those seasons, and this is going to be throughout the whole country. Everyone's going to be going through the same thing, but you also have to realize that there are a lot of different factors that are going into this. Now, I don't think this team's going to be as bad as they were a year ago, mainly because I don't think they're going to be able to be that bad because Roy Williams is not going to let that happen.
He'd probably die.
I think, you got guys that are playing significant roles early on, but I feel like overall the talent is a little bit better in this class. You got to remember, you're bringing in 6 guys in this class, all of which are 4 stars or higher. And, I mean, look, 3 of them are inside the top 20 players in the entire country. So, yeah, they'll be playing big roles for you, but they are guys that should be able to handle playing big roles for you. We've talked about it. The way that you're going to win games, especially early on, put the ball inside. You've got to give it. Even though you're going to have two guys down there that are going to be freshmen, those are two of the guys that I just mentioned are inside of the top 20 in players, recruiting class rankings in this past class.
And it makes it easier when you're going to be giving the ball to the preseason ACC Player of the Year, Garrison Brooks, who was named that today. And you've got Day'Ron Sharp, who coming out of practice is regarded as the team's second-best player already. So I think, and I wrote this the other day in an article I wrote, Carolina has stayed true to their roots of their program of playing inside-out basketball and still winning at a high level. They've won a national championship being anchored by big men. They've made Final Fours. They've won this conference with that kind of philosophy. And while they have tinkered with small ball lines, they've brought in big-time shooters and Cam Johnson and some other guys. If they can beat teams inside, they're going to be as tough a team in the country to beat come March. And as you mentioned, that should be – Garrison Brooks is going to be your first option, and Armando Bacot or Day'Ron Sharp is going to be your second option, and then you'll go from there. And I think that's the thing, is that as long as they can consistently get that, because they didn't always get that consistently last year until everyone got hurt, then it was just Garrison Brooks carrying you for 40 minutes. If they can, from the first game until the final game of the season, they can play with that kind of mindset that we're going to play inside out. We're not going to fall in love with the three, even though we can probably shoot the three better than we did last year. And we're going to win with the rebounding. And we're going to make our foul shots at a higher rate. This team's going to be really good. Because they would have been really good last year if they were good at the simple things. If they're better at the simple aspects of this game, they're going to be marginally better than they were last year. And that's what you got to look at. And, I've said all year long, one of the cursings and the blessing being a Carolina fan is that you went 14-19 last year, but expectations are really high. You were preseason ranked 16th in the country. Your preseason picked 4th in the ACC, so you're still expected to produce on the court. And so I guess, as I mentioned, them being picked to finish 4th in the ACC, with the schedule being as influx as it's going to be, with games being postponed and canceled, we're not going to pick a schedule or predict a record for them, because we just don't know how many games they're going to play. That wouldn't be fair. But I guess my question is this. Their preseason pick to finish 4th. Do they finish above, at, or below that record, or below that prediction?
I'm going to say above by one spot. I think they'll finish 3rd in the ACC behind Virginia and behind Duke. I like the makeup of this team inside, as you said. I mean, not only do you have Garrison Brooks, Day'Ron Sharp, you mentioned Armando Bacot, you've got Walker Kessler.
Big Sturt's coming back from injury.
Loaded group inside. So you can just rotate guys in and out and keep hitting them with fresh bodies inside. That's going to be tough to slow down for a lot of people. I think the telling factor here is what can your backcourt do? Can you find guys that can consistently make perimeter jump shots, which you couldn't do a year ago? Can you find a point guard that can bring a more settled style to your half-court offense? Last year, it was just it was all over the place, because at times Cole Anthony would try to take over. Other times Cole Anthony would try to make sensational passes to other guys, try to make plays. Sometimes it just wouldn't work out. That was the biggest problem for Carolina a year ago. This year, I think, the mindset has to be, hey, look, if you're Caleb Love, you don't have to do everything. You've got a guy that more than likely will be in the running for National Player of the Year in Garrison Brooks. You've got an extremely talented freshman that was a part of your class in Day'Ron Sharp, who we're already looking at and saying could be one of the best big men to come through here in a while. Use those weapons and find a way to be able to grind out some of these games that are going to be tough early in the season. And as the season goes along, I think that'll allow you to build your confidence. And once you get into ACC play, you'll be able to maybe get yourself into a little bit of a groove as a backcourt. If they can do that, I think Carolina has a chance to have a lot of success. I have them 3rd, but I could easily see them 6th or 7th too.
Yeah,
if things go wrong.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they'll finish 3rd. I think they'll get right behind Virginia, right behind Duke, right in the same mindset as you, as where I think this team's going to finish. And if they finish third, I think you look at the season with what COVID's going to do to it, with how young they're going to be in certain spots, and you'll take that because you're still going to be, if you're third in the ACC, you're good enough to win a national championship or at least compete into the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. And I think after what we went through last year, that we would be okay with that. We wouldn't look at that as a lost season. So with that was our full schedule breakdown of Carolina's non-conference and then, of course, their ACC schedule. It's going to be a fun year. There'll probably be some trying moments. There'll probably be some trying games, but nonetheless, it's good to have Carolina basketball back. Before we let you go, one last thing of note to talk about. Carolina did announce today the signings of DeMarco Dunn and Dontrez Styles for their basketball class, which will be coming in 2021. As college basketball had one of its signing days, so they have multiple throughout their recruiting cycle. Those two guys already sent their letter of intent to commit to Carolina. Roy Williams is still working hard to get that class as good as he had this last year, which was number 2 in the country, the highest, or very, very much could have been the best class he's ever signed as Tar Heels head coach. So you got that news for you. And before we let you go, I'm going to talk about the website. As we mentioned, we kind of lead in. This is our busy season with football and basketball overlaying one another. And I've been busy the last few days writing basketball content on the Heel Tough blog website. Right now, you've got a front court preview where I preview the entire front court in depth. You can read about that. You can read a further breakdown of the non-conference and the conference schedules. Today I wrote about Garrison Brooks being picked as the ACC preseason player of the year, the first time Carolina has had such a guy since Luke May in 2018. You can read that. Next week there will be a backcourt preview where I preview the backcourt for Carolina. And then there will be just an overall season preview, and then we'll be right into previews and recaps for the basketball season. I'll let Anthony talk to you about all the great football content we have on the HeelToughBlog.com.
Well, apparently I haven't been busting ass like you have.
Language.
The past couple of days. But language, meanwhile, you've used that word on the Heel Tough Blog podcast at least 3 or 4
Today was the first time I did not cuss in about 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wasn't as angry as they made me.
Congrats. But, no, I mean, we've still been grinding with everything during football season. We've had you guys covered, of course. This past weekend, Carolina took down the Duke Blue Devils. So we have you covered with a recap on the website, as well as the trench report, the stock report, and Zach Hubbard even jumped in and gave us a little bit with his takeaways from the game. So you guys can go back, check that out this upcoming week. Of course, we have the matchup against Wake Forest. We'll have that preview for you. Also have the preview on the Heel Tough Blog podcast, so you guys can check that out, whether you want to check it out on the Facebook. On Facebook, we have the video version that's up there that you guys can check out now and interact with us. Or we also have the podcast version, which you guys can listen to on the same platforms as this. So, yeah, basketball season is rolling around, but the football program, look, 5-2, like you mentioned earlier in the show, they're hanging around. They got a chance to potentially make a run at an ACC championship game if enough things were to break the right way for them. So, it's a fun time to be covering Carolina athletics, and hopefully we'll be getting the baseball team back on the field too, and getting off to a good start to Scott Forbes' career on the diamond.
Yeah, and so make sure you guys are staying in touch with the HeelToughBlog.com. We give you as much content as we can. So with that, lastly, we encourage you guys to like and subscribe to the podcast. Before I ask you to do that, I mentioned back in one of the last times we potted that we were going to be moving to a semi-video format. Right now, those plans are on hold, as if you listen or follow the Heel Tough blog, we were basically kicked out of our studio we've been using to record the football stuff. And right now we're making shift and doing it up in Anthony's attic/basement upstairs in his house.
The original Heel Tough blog studio.
Where we originally started our broadcasting/podcasting versus being annoying Tar Heel fans career. So right now we're going to stick with the audio version only. Maybe if we're allowed back into our studio, we will go to a video format to some capacity. So with that, we encourage you guys to like and subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on every major podcast platform, mostly Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, TuneIn, All the great podcasting websites. The Roy's Boys podcast is on there. Give us a like. Review me as a host. Review Anthony as the co-host. That way we can jump up the boards, and people that haven't found the Roy's Boys podcast can find it and listen to us talk about Carolina basketball every once in a while. So with that, we want to thank you guys for listening. I think